Right, Roland.
Hello, Mitchell.
Hello, Roland. Okay, so here we are in CURO demo, and what we want to be able to do is create a report, similar perhaps to the pipeline management report that I've already got built, which I can show you if I pop open. If I pop that open, then what we can see eventually when it loads is that we've got a standard system view. I think the recording seems to slow it down a little bit, unfortunately. Okay, so from the standard system view, obviously we've got data. Now, critically, these reports work on whatever your view is currently displaying.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that it takes only the data that is in the view. It is to say that it takes only the records in the view. So at the moment, I've got 246 records, and if I run my Excel template from here, it will analyze those 246 records. Okay, so view is all important when it comes to effectively the filtering, because that's what it derives from the view.
Yeah.
Excel templates are accessible from here, and if I run a pipeline analysis, for example, okay, then what that is going to do is, oh, it's just opening on another screen, so I'm just going to drag it over. There is an analysis of the current business pipeline. So it's taking those 200 records, it's putting it into a template that I've designed.
Yeah.
The report itself is here in terms of the actual data, and I can scroll through it all. Okay. So 246 records plus the header. And what we see is visualizations, which I've arranged just for my personal preference over 2 tabs.
Yeah.
This one to look at an analysis of caseload around suitability. This one to look at values and volumes of recommendations, including ongoing advice fees, initial advice fees, and so on. The reality is that any way in which you want to visualize your data, you can do. And the critical thing is, what data do you actually want to be able to analyze? In other words, what fields do you want to expose into this?
Yeah.
All parental fields are available from your chosen entity, but no child records can be exploited using this tool. So in other words, if I want to produce a spreadsheet of analysis, I have to start at the lowest logical point in my data structure. So if I want to, for example, analyze my pipeline activity by client, I wouldn't start at client. I'd start at the point where my pipeline activity is actually held, which is down the tree. Pipeline, of course, is recommendations. So I start at recommendation and I can look up to the parent and I can get the account, and then I can group my results by the account. So I can actually get a summary of pipeline by account, but I start at the lowest logical point.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so the 2 things to bear in mind is start at the lowest logical point, and filtering, don't worry about to begin with, because filtering will be driven by whatever your system view or personal views are.
Yeah.
And the reason that I've actually got a personal view, which is pipeline report, is because I found easier to craft an advanced find in CURO as the start point for the data, than kind of making it up, doing it on the fly.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, when you go to build a brand new Excel template here, in other words, to create an Excel template, you get to filter by the entity. It defaults to where you are, and you get to select a saved view if you want to, and it defaults to where you are.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
All right. But from here, what I can do is select my own personal view.
Yeah.
And save, which is a saved view. So that works really well. And then, having selected it, you can edit the columns. So editing the columns, this is the doing it on the fly bit that I referred to.
Yeah, it's easier if you start with a clear understanding of what you're trying to build and the data required in order to visualize it. I get that.
100%. because
as opposed to looking at the views and then trying to work out what columns are visible, which is a more painful process.
exactly. And
Yeah.
the reality is that if you do it on the fly and you cock it up, i.e. you miss a vital field, you actually have to start again.
Yeah.
There's no way of going back to an existing template that you've created and downloaded and picked all the columns and modifying it. So that's a bit of a frustration, but it's less of a frustration if what you've already created is a saved view.
Yeah.
So this is the one that I created to do that pipeline report. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we might as well do is use the same starting point.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think you're perfectly happy with creating a view of the fields that you want with the filters that you want in them.
Yeah.
And Excel templates then becomes create an Excel template.
Yeah.
Okay. As you see, it's defaulted to my pipeline report.
Yeah.
Okay. I could edit the columns if I wanted to, but I won't. I'll just download the file instead. Okay. So what I then do is show in folder. Okay, and the only reason that I show it in folder is so that I can take it and I can just drag it onto my desktop, because that now is really important as an original document. And when I double click and just open that, you can't see it for a second because it's on my desktop. But when I have that on my desktop, what I have got is an original Excel file with the original query in it. And that original file is incredibly useful because the embedded query works across any CURO tenant. So it means that at the end of the process that we're about to go through, which is to produce some incredible visualizations and to do something really useful for us, what we could then do is email that original file, or if we had access to any customer's system, we could do this for them. You just go in and drop it into their system in a way that I'll show you how in a second. Well,
presumably you have to get rid of all the data, do you?
Yeah, but you can do that again in a manner that I'll show you in this, because you don't actually want to store the data as part of this template anyway.
No, exactly.
For that very, very good reason, but also because, of course, the view is automatically sensitive to what I'm personally able to access.
Yeah.
And you may be able to access entirely different records. So we don't store the data in the template, but to have data here is absolutely critical for reasons that will become apparent as we go through this. Okay, so here basically is the data that was in the view that is now in my Excel template. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what I tend to do is firstly create a canvas. And if we rename that as pipeline analysis, for example, I can drag it to there. And what we'll do is we'll use this effectively as the canvas on which to build the report.
Yeah.
Okay. But we start from the data itself.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we look at some of the columns that we've got here, we've got a premium, we've got a source of funds, we've got an initial fee, we've got an advisor, we've got a power planner, we've got a remuneration basis, which might be quite useful to start cutting and dicing. We've got a current status. So we've got some quite useful fields. And what we also have is an advice action. So we can spot withdrawals, new plans, transfers, and so on. And what I found really important is to actually have a representative set of data to start with.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, you know, if you're building a visualization on a non-representative set of data, you set all the parameters for it and it looks fantastic, and then you run it against a real set of data and suddenly it just looks rubbish.
Yeah.
You know, because the spacing's all over the place. You've got a million different types where you represent where your standard set of data only had 3, so you only allowed for 3 and it looked lovely, and then you put a million types in it and it suddenly just is absolutely unreadable.
Yeah.
Okay. So just, and again, this is just from experience. I've done quite a few of these now, probably 20 of these different templates, and it was just, you know, things to think about. Yep. Gotchas that will just come and bite you otherwise. Okay, so what we do is we click anywhere in our set of data and we insert, exactly as you did before, a pivot table. Okay, now by doing it against the standard default setting, it's going to create a new worksheet. Okay, and just personally, I always find that that is actually that really works, because then you keep all of your working neatly laid out and separated. And then at the end you hide your working, so that actually what people get is just the results. Okay, so if we look at an analysis which is ever so simple of provider, and we look at, for example, initial fees. Okay, then we've got the standard functionality which enables us to sort by, for example, some of the fees. Yep. And what we can start to do immediately is just make that look how we want it. Okay. And then what we can do is we can analyze that a little bit further by charting it. And what we might want to do is maybe a nice bar chart. And the reason that I sorted it upside down is because when you chart it, it does it the other way. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. We've got a simple chart. Okay. And so let's give it a title. So that's the AF by provider. And again, we don't want to get too hung up on what it looks like at this stage, because I have to say it is very easy to lose hours in the different designs, and it's what you can do. But the reality,
so why is AIG not showing?
Yep, just because there's not enough space here.
Right.
So this is
okay.
This is really what I was sort of referring to in that comment about, you know, think about how much space you need to allow for these things.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, but ultimately there's some things that we probably want to take off of here. So for example, we can just turn off the field buttons. Yeah. And then what we want to do is we actually want to right click and move this to where it's ultimately going to be, and we want to take it to become an object in the report.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Yeah. And then of course what we can do is this, which is just all the working, right click and we'll hide it.
Yep.
Okay. So we've got a nice report. I think it's quite useful to leave the data.
Yeah.
Because actually the ability to just cut and dice and slice this is actually quite valuable in its own right.
Yeah.
I tend not to hide that.
Yeah.
But the report itself, I tend to consolidate onto one or more dashboards.
Yeah.
So we've now got, and I'll just unhide sheet 2. Okay. What I've also found is that to rename these is quite useful. Only because when you've got quite a number of them and you click on unhide, if they're all called sheet 2, sheet 3, sheet 4, sheet 27, it's actually, you know, quite, you end up unhiding about 20 of them before you actually find the one that you wanted to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I wanted to do something about this, if I wanted to modify in the columns of data, if I wanted to change it in some way, if I wanted to apply a filter to it, for example, then I would need to go to back to the data, and I'd need to make my modifications here. Even if I just want to change the way in which it's sorted, for example, I would need to come back to here in order to do that.
Right.
And as I say, that's why having this named logically is quite useful.
Yeah.
Okay. So here, what we want to be able to do is make sure that the data within this pivot table is refreshed every time we run the report. So when you click in any pivot table, then you can click on options, so analyze and options, and what you get under options is a number of really important options effectively.
Yeah.
So here, refresh the data when opening the file. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And here, we don't want to save the source data with the file.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
So fundamentally, they are, you know, and you only have to do this once, because if you tell one pivot table to refresh the data when opening the file, it's effectively referring to the file. So therefore, the whole template gets refreshed.
But this is on a template by template basis, by report basis. So you have to do this on every report. There's no default.
That's correct. The default settings are the ones that I've just changed.
Yeah. No problem.
All right, but I don't have to do it on every pivot table. Once I've done it on one pivot table,
I get that.
all pivot tables. Okay, so that's cool. What I also want to do is perhaps now change this, because this is lovely. But what if I wanted to filter it so that I could just see the results by an advisor, for example?
Yeah.
Okay, that's when we bring in the analysis and the slicer options.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can select any field that you want to connect it to.
Yeah.
So actually, let's think of what we might want to connect it to. So definitely advisor.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe remuneration basis might be quite useful.
Yeah.
Okay. Current status probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. We might want to look at it by product.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually we've got a number of slices that we want to put in now, because I've put this onto the pipeline analysis.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so I can just move them around, and this is where we start to get that layout that,
Yeah.
you know.
That's great. Yeah, really neat.
All right, and again, because these are just objects, whilst I can fiddle around and size them, etc., these objects do have the alignment. So, you know, you can just multi-select and, you know, align left, for example. You can also resize them sensibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so why are those grayed? Why have we got an empty one on top of product and we've got grey ones grayed out on the others?
I suspect, we'll just test this in a second. I suspect that that's because one of the grade ones, Rob Paget, has got a record within the system.
Yeah.
So in here, he will be an advisor.
Yeah.
Okay, and here is the advisor. So he is in there as a selectable advisor, but don't forget what we are analysing is the initial advice fee. So he will be an advisor in the system, but against which there is no initial advice fees.
Yeah, understand.
And that's why
so
it's
click
great.
that. Yeah, there you go. Perfect, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. And why the blank box on product? That because we've got a blank product.
That'll be why.
It's the product, one below.
Yeah. So sorry, that's remuneration basis, but the same rule will apply. So we have got an initial advice fee for a provider that isn't named, for a product that isn't named.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we've got some data quality issues here.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love this, and I love the way that these filters work together.
Yeah, that's very nice. Very nice.
Really want to get to.
Yeah, really good. Yeah.
Okay, so we also had a timeline. Or sorry, I also commonly add in a timeline. And again, if you just click on a chart or a pivot table, then you get the pivot chart tools or pivot table tools. And again, I can analyze this, but this time by inserting a timeline.
Yeah.
Okay, and that only gives you dates that are in your data set. So it actually knows, of course, what the dates are. So if we do advice date, okay.
Yeah.
Now, critically, when I have selected this as an object, I've got here report connections. When I select that as an object options, I've got report connections. Okay, so all of these have report connections. So when I go back to advice date, options, report connections, what that's saying is that this control here, which is going to control a pivot table, is linked to which pivot tables. So I've only got one pivot table, and because I added in the timeline or the slicer from that pivot table, it's automatically made the association for me.
Yeah.
But just bear that in mind, because when we add in any more pivot tables, they won't automatically be connected. And I'll show you what to do about that in a second.
Okay.
All right. So we put the timeline in the corner. Just extend that out a tiny wee bit. There you go. Okay. There we go. It's not that neat, but it'll do. Okay. Having done this, I've now got the basics of my report. In order to add some more visualizations in here, I go back to my pipeline and I basically do the job of repeating.
Yeah.
Pivot table, default, add a new worksheet. Okay. This time I'm going to look at something different. I'm going to look at the premium by, let's have a look at the source of funds. Okay, that's interesting. I'm going to sort it in exactly the same way. So sort options, I'm going to sort it ascending by the sum of the premium. Okay, because I know that when I then convert that home, I'm going to format my money. And the reason that I do that is because when I do an analysis and I input a pivot chart and I'm going to have another bar chart, then it's going to put it in what to me is a more visually obvious way. Okay, I click on the chart. Here, obviously, I can select my lovely design. Here I can add in chart elements. So I might want to put on data labels, for example, and I want them on the outside of the end. That looks quite nice. I'm going to take off the field buttons. That's going to tidy it up for me. I don't really need that. Doesn't add much value, do I? Because I can infer from the title what that actually is. So again, I go to design and I go to add chart element. This time I don't want to add something. I just want to get rid of the legend.
Yeah.
Okay, because here I can describe what I'm looking at, which is premium by source of fund.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Usefully, the template designs, but frustratingly, if you've actually modified something, it will change it, as you can see. So it's kind of like pick the thing that's closest to your template and then modify the things that you want to change about it. Again, that's just kind of one of those things that you go, ah, damn. You know, I wish I'd thought about that at the beginning. But when you've got it looking lovely, right click, move chart, where to, pipeline analysis, okay. And then it's laying it out.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's got a couple of things on there now. So just picking up on that point that I made about this, obviously that one's dynamic, but this one isn't dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay. And in order to remedy that, I click on any of these, go to report connections. Automatically it was connected to pivot table 1, but it's not connected to 2.
Now it is.
But now it is.
It's really good, isn't it?
All right.
Yeah,
So
yeah, really elegant.
Connections, turn them on. Okay. And the timeline is exactly the same. So now everything is totally dynamic.
Yeah.
Everything
Fantastic.
is totally sync. And you know, that is quite useful because it's not always the case that you would necessarily want things to be filtered, you know, if they're not relevant, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the bulk of it in terms of actually creating chart-based reports.
Yeah.
What you can also do is, and I've done this on quite a number of reports, you can do something else as well. So here I might want to do the a total of some description. So perhaps here, total IAF for the whole report. Yeah, so excuse the formatting here, obviously
Yeah.
an exercise in aesthetics, but I might do total IAF, and in that cell, that field, I just want to have a total number.
Yeah.
Okay, so how would we get that? So what I want is a filtered total of basically the report total. So I can't easily see what the total of all of that adds up to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
what I can do is I can insert in here that value.
Nice.
And then I can format it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's quite useful
Yeah,
because
that's great.
I've already applied filters to that pivot table. So when I filter it,
Yeah, it's all there.
exactly.
That's
And
great.
I think that's an incredibly useful thing
Yeah.
because this is also Excel. So therefore I can do anything I want with that. If I want to
Yeah.
do, you know, averages, max, min,
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. Yeah. Really good.
So obviously that is the grand total. What I would need to do is reproduce the pivot table with the same filters in order to not do a total, because obviously I've got some here, but value field settings, I could then do count, average, minimum, maximum, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Okay.
But nonetheless, that is obviously how you do that. And so therefore the ability just to select individual items is, I think, fantastically useful when it comes to providing an overall summary. And the other thing that I've used quite extensively is to go into the pipeline report, and here we've got all of the columns of data.
Yeah.
But if I've got something which is maybe I want to categorize things by, say, I want to look at large cases, small cases, and medium-sized cases.
Yeah.
Because actually it's really important to me to see, you know, what is the exposure by advisor to big cases, or maybe because I guess there's an implicit cost in administering each case. Is it better to have a small number of big cases or a big number of small cases? I guess if you're looking from an admin perspective and a caseload, then you want a small number of big cases.
Yeah, preferably.
Okay, so let's just do case size. Right, so when I add that in, as you see, it automatically adds it into the table.
Mhm.
Okay, and here what I can do, and you see I haven't actually got the formula bar, so I'm just going to turn that on. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is the standard if equals if. Yep. So if that field, and it puts its own syntax in, but you just select the field in exactly the same way, is greater than £5,000, then that would be
Big.
large.
Yep.
Comma, else, comma, otherwise. All right, and the reason that I do that with the else and the otherwise is so that you can copy and just paste in to build your syntax.
Yeah.
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 Because obviously by pasting them in, you know, you're starting to build up a.
Yeah.
But what I tend to do is actually build that logic here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I made a mistake there. Apologies. So I've already got the if, then, otherwise, haven't I?
Yeah.
So actually it's that I need to copy. And I'd need to replace that there. Okay, so if initial fee is greater than, and I think I'm right in saying that this works to the point where it's the first answer wins.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, but we'll soon find out. If initial fee is greater than 1. This is not a great example, but I'm just doing it to illustrate the point.
Yeah.
Small. Otherwise, what we could do, uncategorized.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever. I said it was a really crap example, but it just shows the point that actually what you can do is you can define your logic externally. Hang on, I've totally fucked that up, haven't I?
Don't worry.
Because I don't need the equals.
That's right.
That's it. It confirms that you can define your logic and you can just take it out and you can just paste it in.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a medium case because it's more than £2,000. That's a small case because it's more than £1, but it isn't either of the other two.
Yeah.
What's lovely then is that in exactly the same way as insert, what I can now do is actually use case size to, so let's just refresh that. So it adds it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So add case size and add maybe the value of the investment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I think it was the initial fee, wasn't it, that I was looking at? Yeah. So again, we'll just do the formatting. Yeah. Again, we do the sort it by the sum of the initial fee. Okay. And then again, we're going to analyze it in chart form. Yeah, we might actually do a pi this time. And again, I'm just going to move the chart where to, pipeline analysis. Okay. Here. So it doesn't matter where you do the formatting. Take off the button, take off the field list. And here you can go to work with the designer. So add a chart element, data labels. Yeah.
Yeah. Really good.
Or a call out maybe, might be nice. Okay. Legend, get rid of the legend because it can be inferred. Okay, again, we remember that because none of these actually work with that. Yeah, we click on the element. So here I'm going to do it the other way. You can click on that and go to options and you can report connections, or here you can go to analyze and you can filter connections, which gives you the, if you like, a more efficient way of adding this in. So rather than going to each of these individually,
just hit the lot. Yeah.
just select the lot. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
All right, and that way.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, so ultimately all that is illustrating for us is that we can apply logic. Sorry, we can get chartable results basically by just applying the kind of if logic.
Yeah. It's very neat.
Okay, so we had IFA provider. That was premium by source. Okay, that one is IF by case size. And and that is my summarized results. I'm going to hide each of these.
Yep.
Okay. And obviously now spend the next 3 hours just making this look nice.
Yeah, that's what I do best.
I'll do the next 4 hours then in that case.
Yeah,
Obviously you've got all of the design tools. One of the really good things about this is that I've only got some very simple examples here, but let's take this one, for example. So this spans through to 600,000. Often you get charts that have got a very large number of very large numbers.
Yeah.
They just don't, you know, so actually what you want to do is do it, you know, so that then you get the number 600 and you put a key here to say that it's actually thousands, if you see what I mean, rather than having it expressed like this. So again, you just got to take a view on that. But what you have is the ability to format selection. And this just gives you absolute control over the presentation of absolutely everything on there.
Yeah.
So, you know, your series, your labels, your values, the whole lot, how it's filled, how it's outlined, the text, the alignment. You can have it so that if you've got a sequence of dates, then they're spaced according to the sequence. So in other words, 1st of January, 2nd of January, 23rd of March, for example, would have a bigger space between them. You've got all of those controls. And again, you can just completely lose yourself in the formatting of the entire thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So effectively, when you click on it, then design lets you basically have your basic designs, pick your basic color scheme, pick the basic type of chart, quickly lay it out according to some standards, and quickly add elements to it if you want to. Yeah. But then taking that to the next level, like for example, if we did this for SJP, they would insist on having their own color palette. Yeah. So we'd have to have that loaded in. I believe you can do, well, in fact, you can do it. I don't know how, but you can do it. But, you know, you've got absolute control over all of this. The one thing that I tend to do is when you click on view, take off the formula bar, for example. Which is quite nice.
Yeah, really good. Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it basically. Oh, and also get rid of grid lines and headings.
Yeah.
And get rid of the formula bar. That's it. You've got to click on the page. So actually that just looks like now a neat canvas, and we might put a heading in there and so on and so on. But fundamentally, when you've done all of that, it is just save. Okay. And so the point that I made earlier in terms that what we've now got is this report is now saved. I could drop this into any CURO system and it would produce this report dynamically. So let's just see how we do that. So I'll just close that out. Okay. Get rid of my working example of a nested if. And what we can do from Excel templates here,
upload your template.
Okay, so again, I go back to my create Excel template, but this time I go to upload. Now, if I do it here, okay, and everybody has the ability to do it here, if they have got the ability to create personal document templates. Okay, so this would upload it as a personal template.
Understand? Otherwise, you have to go to settings.
Drag it in. Otherwise, you just go to settings. Exactly. And what's cool about that is if I go to settings, now, of course, not everybody actually has the ability to get into settings. At all. Actually, when you look at the apps within SJP, only system admins have got this. But you go to templates. Now, I've come completely out now of the area of the system that I was in. But that doesn't matter because when I go to document templates, okay, and I just add upload template, and in fact, I'm just going to rename this to pipeline report demo. Okay, so I've just renamed the file on my desktop. Okay, upload it. So I'm now loading it as what will be a company-wide template. Okay, save, and I can enable security roles here to define who has actually got it. But I won't bother because that means it will be available to everybody.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
And I get back to my workplace, and I think I started at the very beginning on my dashboards. And when I pop that open now, and I go to my Excel templates, then I've got pipeline report demo, and I run that report. And if I've done everything okay, kaboom.
Ta-da. Fantastic. It's really good, mate. Really, really good.
And that's
really
it.
good. Yeah, nice.
If I find anything more about it, I'll let you know. But to be honest with you, that covers all of the reports that I've produced, just more or less of what I've just been through.
Yeah. No, really, really good, mate. Really good.
All right.
Love it. Yeah. No, very good. That's a really useful tutorial. If you could, well, I'll grab the recording as well, so I can presumably download that, can't I?
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll just stop recording now, and then it will take a little while, and then I'll send you a link to it if it isn't automatically available to you. But I'll just stop